When the World Health Organization declared COVID as a pandemic in March 2020, overnight, countries closed schools, workplaces, and shut down borders. This left people scrambling to adapt. Disruptions to health systems put important services like family planning and prenatal care out of reach for millions of women. However, another issue emerged: the ongoing mental trauma that comes with having a baby during a pandemic. Mothers complained of staying isolated during most of their pregnancy, which was really hard mentally and emotionally.
The clinic visits, at least we just went to the local clinic because I couldn't go to where my doctor was. It was a bit far, and then there they had regulations, like I couldn't go with my husband. The scan room, I couldn't go with him into the scan room. It was just me. So he couldn't be there to hold my hand and see what's happening. And you know, every pregnancy you're just scared because you don't know what this scan is going to reveal. So you're there tensing alone.
When I went into labor, they didn't do my COVID test. With the loss of blood, surgery, I don't know my COVID status. Will I make it? That was it. I was not even worried about the baby because babies used to make it, but mothers never used to make it that much.
And then now going back home, and that's when it hit me, you know. Actually, it's COVID because no visitors came. Yeah. I mean, people didn't come to visit for a long time. And I wanted people to come.
First grandson over first grandson. So this baby was a big deal. So even before I left hospital, people wanted to see me. And I could clash with my mother-in-law because people are waiting to see me. And I'm like, no, I'm not ready to see anyone, because for some reason I also became very, very protective because I'm really worried about this baby getting COVID. So we would clash a lot because I would put people on pause.
I couldn't get a nanny from Shags. I couldn't get a nanny. So it was just my husband and I. That experience was bad because I don't think I want to go through that again. Just the whole process, I don't want to go through it again. I mean, if someone had given me a choice, I could have carried my baby 2 years so that I give birth to them when things are a bit calm. Not that year, not last year. Because last year, there are so many restrictions, you know. And when you have your baby, sometimes you want people around you, familiar faces. My biggest takeaway is that there's so many things we take for granted, and that is friends and family support when it comes to being a new mom.
So it's until recently that I am learning to make peace with the things that I could not change, that happened to me, and it's okay that they happened because I survived. Yeah.
This panel will be on care work. I'm not very sure whether we are all familiar with care work and how care work works, but care work is a subcategory of work that deals directly with care processes. Care work can be paid and it can be unpaid. Now, why we are mostly relating care work with motherhood and maternal health care is because unpaid care work is mostly at home and it's predominantly done by women. And this, not only has it been a problem with the economic invisibility of care work, but it has been a problem because it puts on an extra load to women and has led to several mental instabilities and mental challenges, including depression and postpartum depression. So today, you will hear these conversations, and we'll also try, I really hope the panelists will do that, we'll try and bring forth some of the challenges, some of the interventions, and the space that we're in as a nation. Do we have policies? Do we have any plan to strategically address care work and its challenges? And what are we doing? What are all of you beautiful, competent people doing? So, for a start, I'll jump on to Maggie. You are a content creator, which, by the way, I've realized it's really hard work. Congratulations. Could you please tell us about your experience as a mother, and also speak to, I would love for you to speak to what you have been doing, how your experience has led to what you're doing, and what are some of the things that you'd want to highlight from your content?
Thanks. I started content creation back then in 16, when I was not happy with the law, and I was just focused on hair until I got pregnant, and the first pregnancy was pre-COVID, and I never in my entire world had met anyone who had a miscarriage. So it wasn't even something in my thoughts until it happened to me. And I hesitated sharing that for a very long time because it was like, why am I the only one? Like, is it a curse? I'm married where they're very religious. So saying that you've had a miscarriage is almost like, that doesn't happen here. So why you? Yeah. So until I shared my blog post, I wrote a blog post about my emotions and everything. I was just writing, and I posted it, and that's when I got so many women who had gone through the same thing. And I think that was my journey into sharing a lot of motherhood content without knowing. So months later, I think when I was now finally ready to get to be a mom again, I got pregnant in Feb. Now 20, the COVID year is 2020, yeah? So when I got pregnant in 2020, I was excited, but I didn't know we're gonna get locked, like the country will be locked in a few, like the next week. So COVID hit, and now there was isolation. And I remember very well that I had a very difficult pregnancy, that I was on bed rest for 4 months because I was not allowed to move around because of a threatened miscarriage. And so it was already, I had the nausea, the vomiting, like I vomited. I think I lost like 15 kgs in like 4 months. So already it's hard. Then no one can visit because everyone has been told to stay home. So it was, looking back, these are things I look back. I don't even know what I was going through. I don't even know how I survived. But it was a lot of isolation. I just thank God I had like a good support system. And what really stood out at that time, I stopped content creation because I don't want to tell the world I am pregnant. What if I lose the pregnancy? I'm not ready for that. So I just stopped completely. I was just out of the scene. And the first 4 months were hell because now you go to hospitals for your checkup. Me, as a content creator, I thought I'll just film these things. But now, you can't even see the doctor's face because of the PPE. They're being sprayed. You're wondering, okay, you're the one bringing the COVID here, but I get they were protecting themselves. But I was also like, I had like a victim mentality. Me, I'm pregnant. Why do I have to wear a mask? I can't breathe. I'm breathing for two. Like, like if you told me, please wear a mask, madam, I would cry. I'd start crying. Can't you see? I'm pregnant. Like, where, looking back as a bit dramatic, but it was really tough. And what I remember is that there are people who remained constant in my life, like checking in. My husband was there. My sister came to live with me. My best friend, she's here. She's also a doctor. She used to check up. Like, there were constant people because they are all thinking I'm at risk. So, because you don't want to give me COVID, so you're avoiding, but I also want people. Yeah, so this went on. I started feeling better. I decided, at some point, I'm going to my mom's, stayed there. By month 6, I was feeling better. I was thinking my life is coming back. And then I got appendicitis and I was pregnant. So when I started getting this, that's when I think I felt the impact of COVID. Because now when I started feeling bad, the first person I usually call is my friend because she's a doctor. She's Grace. And I tell her I can't drive, but I'm coming to your place. I don't even remember how we got to her place. Then she took me to a hospital in town. I'm being checked. The baby is fine, but I'm still in pain. At some point, by the time I'm leaving town, I can't walk. The watchmen in that building have to help me. And all this time, I'm wondering what the hell is happening to me. Like, I just survived first trimester. I should be thriving. And I decided, let's go to Lancet, we do a test, because I don't want the whole procedure of going to a hospital and getting checked. That thing for the nose, I hated it. I still hate it. So we go to Lancet, I get checked. And throughout this day, it was just one day, we were with her, and I had gotten news that my dad had COVID. So that meant I'm at risk because I was with my sister the previous day. That meant I might have COVID. I might infect my friend. But I was in so much pain. At some point, I remember she removed her mask and said, by the way, if we die together. Because I can't breathe. I'm also struggling to walk. She has to help me. The last thing in our head is the mask. So it was really a tough day. Got to Lancet, got the test done, went home. It was just said to be a UTI, so I'm trying to take meds, and now the pain comes in double. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how do I get to the hospital? And there's curfew. Now it's past curfew because we've been all day in hospitals. So when we got home and I got worse, I called her again because she has a pass. She's a doctor. We wouldn't be disturbed. And I called my doctor. I told him the pain has gotten worse. And he's like, I think you're in premature labor. I'm like, I can't lose another pregnancy. So I'm crying. She comes. They carry me to the car. We survived. We reached hospital unbothered because she had a pass. I remember that very well because by the time I was going to hospital, emergency unit, I'm checked. Thank God my cervix was not open. So I stayed in hospital. And I think I stayed in hospital for 3 days, but it felt like 3 months because I am alone. They have to put me alone before my COVID results come back. They've already done that thing to the nose. I'm crying. It was a very long stay because before they discovered my appendix is the issue, it was like day 3 because the pains came back. I went into surgery. No one could visit me. That's what really messed my health. No one, not even my mom, because they're all in isolation because of my dad, either way. And there are rules, one visitor. So I'm just lucky that my friend was working at Aga Khan, so she had access. She could see me anytime. And then now my one visitor was my husband. But I was losing my mind. After the surgery, I remember asking for a discharge before my body was okay. I acted like a proper actor. No, doc, I'm fine. I have to go because I just want to be out of here. There's COVID protocols. They're outsourcing food, so the food is not so nice. It comes cold. I can't walk. So that day I just put an act. I was fine. I got home and I couldn't walk because my stomach was big. 6 months. You've had surgery. It's been stitched. They want the baby to move. Anytime my baby moves, I am in pain because the stitches are moving. It was a lot. It was painful. And then because of surgery, they put a lot of gas. I need to go to the loo. I can't go to the loo. It's just gas. I can't walk to the loo. I can't sit. Like, you see, standing and sitting. I could not do any of that without screaming. So I had to be taken back to hospital. And in my head, I was like, I think my friend has been with me too long. Let's try this time. Let's just drive, me and my husband. 3 kilometers in, the police stop us. It's curfew. It's 8. And they're like, where are you going? And we're like, hospital. She's in pain. She's in pain where? She's pregnant. We can't see. I'm like, what do you mean you can't see? You can't see my stomach. So, okay, my stomach was big, but even them, we touch our bellies like that. You can't see my stomach. She's like, okay, where is your letter from the chief? And I think I lost my mind. I just remember that statement, and I remember the lawyer in me came out. Letter from the who? There's a baby who waits for the chief in this area. I just got so mad. They apologized and gave us they even escorted us. I was just a mad woman. So once I got to hospital, I got readmitted. Readmission, they said, you have to repeat the COVID test. I'm like, I was here in the morning. Why am I repeating this test? They're like, it's protocol. Anytime I'm tested, it's 8,000. I get tested because everything is in my nose and I'm still sick. I vomit. Now, any pain I was in was triggering premature labor. So I could not afford to be in pain. And this time I stayed in hospital for an extra week until I go to the loo. That was the condition because I could not go to the loo and I could not walk. I remember singing praise and worship just to go to the loo. Please, God, today I need to poop. That's all. I wake up in the morning, listen to gospel, and I'm like, my prayer request today. I think if you watch my YouTube channel, you'll see, like, I said, today is the 1st of August, and I pooped. That's the day I recorded myself. But I stayed in hospital. I stayed in a ward that had moms with kids, and it fucked up my mind. I stayed where babies were crying. Me, I'm in pain anytime my baby moves, and the nurses come. Has the baby moved? Yeah, they check, and I'm in pain every time. And I just got more and more depressed, and my parents couldn't visit. You know, that time you just need your mom. My mom couldn't visit because my dad had COVID, so they're all in isolation. By the grace of God, I was discharged, and now later on they came to visit me, and I recovered. Like this is like 3 months into now for the journey to be over. So I was like, hey God, me, I've gone through a lot. See, we'll just have labor for like 15 minutes. I've already gone. This is me and God. Where the day for labor came, and I was praying so hard, it doesn't get to curfew time. And luckily, my labor was like in the morning because my head was just curfew, curfew. Like the curfew messed up my mind and everything. I think I saw the humane part of my doctor when I had the emergency surgery because every time I went, it's you know how the PPE kit like separates them. They're not human almost. It's like a robot entering the room, getting sprayed. Shwa, shwa, shwa. Yeah, how are you? How weak what? They check, they're out. And I understand they had to do like that because at that point they have to take care of the too many doctors were dying. But it really robbed off that experience of I was even scared of telling my doctor when I had the pain. I was like, hey, really understand. But I saw him so human because that day he was also like, I'm not wearing my mask. We have to save this woman. Yeah. So once we got to give birth, I gave birth. I'd labor the whole day. I don't know what happened to my agreement with God. No one told me it's painful, but I'd labor the whole day, and then I had a C-section. And my husband was the only person allowed in the room, and there were no visitors, which is really, I don't like it. I hope they've changed. It's good because you're tired, but again, me, I had missed my family. Me, I just wanted my family. But my sisters were able to like talk to the soldiers and beg them, and my mom, and once they came see me and everything. But then they could not keep, actually they lived with me that first week, but people couldn't visit now. You know, even if my parents came, I have first photos of my kid with my parents in masks. Like, I don't know what I'll be telling my kid. You see, these eyes, this is your grandfather. Because you can just see the eyes. So, yeah, so the first week was horrible because my CS wound opened and I was alone again. I was like, hey, God, one person, all these things in like 4 months. My wound opened once my sisters and my friends, they'd stepped out because my best friend was getting married and I needed them to go represent me. So it's like, you guys go, I'll be fine. But I was not fine. And just when they stepped out, I just saw I just saw water on the floor. I was like, okay, where is this from? And then I look around. You know, your stomach is so big. So I'm like, I had to look for a mirror. And CS, I couldn't stand. My CS recovery was horrible because I kept getting worse. So when I finally stand, go to the mirror, I just see pus coming out of my body like this. It's like not that it's trickling, it was just coming out like that. Woo. I was like, who do I call? And then my baby woke up. So I'm with the baby one hand. I'm looking at the mirror. My dress gets wet. I fall down because the floor is wooden. I fall down. We have to find our way up. Long story short, I remembered my husband is a friendly man and he was always saying, you know, our neighbor is a daktari. You should say hi to people. I'm an introvert. So I never used to say hi. But that day, I knocked on my neighbor's bell. That's the only thing I could reach. And I was like, it was a guy. Is your mom in? And he's like, no. He's very antisocial. So I just said, okay, when she comes back, just tell her to come back. because in my head I was like, this is how we die in the house. This is just how we die. Yeah. So I had surrendered, but then the mom came 5 minutes in. Now it was just blood plus pus, and now she's like, I have to wear a mask. She doesn't have her kit. Even her, she just like, okay, if we get COVID, we get COVID. What's the worst? See, you're also going through worse. She came, she nursed me, she injected me, the baby was taken by the sun. It was just dramatic. So my whole recovery, in short, was just a mess. It was a mess because one, there's curfew, and then two, people can't come people can't come just freely to see me. If you come see me, you're gonna stay with me for a long time, because we don't want you to keep going and keep. My sister stayed with me for a whole month, and I'm really grateful for that. But COVID just robbed me the experience of women coming to sing for my baby, all those things. And the journey now to becoming a mom was really hard because of the isolation, because I don't even know if a nanny is supposed to, what protocol do I follow with a nanny? They come, I have to test them. I'm tired of being tested. Do I have to subject them to get tested? How will I trust them with my baby if they are not tested? So even my first nanny, I can count how many times they held my baby, because I couldn't let go, because COVID. In my head, it's just COVID, COVID, COVID. And I surrendered, I think, like the third month. Now I got a new nanny. She loved my baby, but I used to remind her of the protocols. But I didn't know the impact of all that has happened in less than like a year, until I got to my 6 month and I'm losing my mind. And I ran to therapy and I don't know what's up with me. I can't sleep. I'm traumatized. Like I just can't sleep. I need to see my baby's breathing. Of course, new motherhood is already difficult, on my marriage, on myself. I'm not sleeping. Mentally, I was just not okay. So that's how I ended up in therapy. That's how I realized. That's when she told me, you've gone through all this in 7 months. And I was like, by the way, yeah. That's when I realized I've been through a lot of trauma, and then add the pandemic. And then I was not working. I was not working because I'm on bed rest, and then schools were closed. My main income is music education. Schools were closed, so I was not working. Even if I was to get gigs for content creation, I was not posting. So how? Money is good. Money is. Unajua inabembeleza roho. You just feel sweetness when your account looks good.
Yeah.
So all those things landed me in therapy. And that's when I became more vocal about motherhood. That's when I now started sharing motherhood content, in a nutshell.
Thank you, Margie. We'll circle back to the mental health, the relationship between mental health and maternal health. But for the minute, I want to hear Neely. I mean, Margie has set the ground of what a lot of women, I have to say, went through during the pandemic, and how our policies, our regulations, and even the guidelines that were released during the pandemic did not take into consideration care work. So please, I would love for you to tell us a bit about the work that you do, and how some of these issues have been brought to you, and what are some of the interventions that you've managed to do?
You're a strong woman. I got my first baby when I was 24. I think I enjoyed motherhood. COVID didn't prepare us, prepared no one in the world. And Kenya, just like the other countries, it got us unaware. And when we were putting stakeholders together and just quickly thinking, what do we do for our women? I work for an organization that is mainly a network of healthcare providers who run their own small facilities, and the rest working in public facilities. And our focus is mainly reproductive, maternal, newborn, adolescent, and young people. We also work with a network of young people, and this is because we understand that young people are very critical when it comes to programming. Young people have been isolated. When we talk about access to services, access to care, they've really been a neglected lot. So we work with all that. We are in about 43 counties in the country. So when COVID happened, one, we got, of course, our providers complaining and saying that they have to lock their facilities by 6, because being healthcare providers at that time, there was no protocol, there were no guidelines on how they were supposed to take care of women and girls, and just the whole population as a whole. Secondly is we did not have PPEs, and my colleague from AMREF here can testify to it. We had to quickly, organizations that worked broadly on sexual and reproductive health, you can't believe that COVID became our priority. So what did this mean? That we neglected women and girls. We started getting reports from the communities that we work with. Women are walking for long distances to get to facilities, number one. Number two, they are dying because they could not get to facilities. They experienced high costs of transport because of social distancing. We asked them to buy masks. These are women that cannot access. You can imagine Maggie telling her story. Try thinking about that woman from the community who cannot afford $1 a day. What is priority? Food for the kids, mask, or transport to go to the facility? Usually they would visit the government institutions and get the antenatal care for free. But this time, they have to incur a bigger cost just to go and see a midwife. And this midwife is not protected. And the midwife is saying, you know what? I am not going to expose myself. So I hear you. And you can imagine if we had to put a woman from the rural area and Maggie together. The story is almost the same. And you know, Maggie had even the privileges of having a doctor friend, access to, probably she had an insurance, but we are talking about women who are depending on government institutions or some of the facilities that we support in the communities for them to get these services. So just like any other country, of course, we had lockdowns, and I can't overemphasize, Maggie has talked about it, stigma. We have always talked and said amongst ourselves that by the day COVID will end, we don't know when, we will have a lot of mental trauma, mental issues to deal with than any other pandemic we've ever seen in the world. Then, of course, we had the curfew, we had the fear of getting COVID, and then there was, of course, the high cost of PPEs, the transport that I've talked about, and then our healthcare providers, no one thought they needed to be trained on how to manage COVID. And, you know, some of us that work with these providers, it was not in our budgets. And we just thank God that we work with very kind donors that allowed us to reallocate and just prioritize COVID and start training providers on how to provide, provide COVID services, do community sensitization, and I will allow Grace to talk more about that. So quickly we sat down with the division of the I was just telling Carol that I had to literally write down so that I don't use our abbreviations. So yeah, with the division of the reproductive, maternal, newborn, and family planning, we sat down and thought, we quickly need guidelines in place. We need to save our women and girls. And we developed the reproductive, maternal, newborn, and family planning care services, and abbreviated as the COVID-19 RMNH Guidelines 2020. And these guidelines were to ensure that women and girls could continue to access the reproductive and maternal health care services, even amidst the pandemic. And this was to ensure that they access both preventive and clinical aspects, including safety and quality of reproductive maternal health care. The second one that was also developed during that period was the National Community Health Digitalization Strategy 2020-2025. And its main focus was on provision of services and digitalization. And I think just having bloggers here, we appreciate what social media, podcasts, and all that is doing. But again, my question is, how do we reach out to the communities, to that woman and girl, and they form the biggest population? How do they benefit from these innovations that are very creative, and they have a lot of information which is required by the women that need these services? So of course, with having those two policies, and the interesting part about the RMNH policy then was because pregnant women were very vulnerable, and they remain vulnerable. When you get pregnant, your immunity goes down, you know, vomiting the first 3 months, it's bad. So you can imagine being exposed to COVID, then that means that we were going to see lose a lot of women because of COVID-19. So one thing that the ministry with the committee of experts emphasized on was to make sure that we are providing space for telemedicine. We are allowing organizations that are able to put hotlines in place to be able to support access to services. And of course, while engaging with counties, and because of a lot of women crying and saying that labor does not actually tell you that nitaanza kesho asubuhi, lala tu, wakati kafyu itaisha, you will go into labor. You know, you're seated there comfortable doing your thing, and then boom, you see waters coming out. So counties like Kilifi, Kisumu, they worked very closely through the community strategy, and they gave the border borders the curfew pass. But we still had counties that were very hesitant, that said no, serikali imesema. You know, and just like her, glad you are a lawyer. Imagine if it was a naive woman from the community. Are you sure she would have pulled that? No. She would have probably ended up, giving birth on the road, or we would have ended up losing that life. So we had counties that quickly thought, bravely, of course, through the support of the county health management team, and they allowed to put structures in places where, and they provided a whole list of border borders. So that means that you knew who was closer to you, and you could call them when you went into labor. So this allowed women to access maternal services at whatever time. And this, of course, reduced incidences. As we progressed, we saw numbers of women giving birth, reports from mainstream of women giving birth on the roads, women not being able to go to hospitals at night. We started seeing lesser and fewer of those reports. And like I mentioned now, through being empowered by the RMNH guidelines that had provision for mHealth, and through the National Community Health and Digitalization Strategy, we quickly grabbed the opportunity. And I'll speak about the organization I work with. We developed Nena na Binti Hotline in 2020, and this was reactive, basically because of the women and girls that were crying. They needed to talk to healthcare providers. There are those ones that had gender-based violence, and they didn't know who to talk to. Jumambiwa, you can't leave the house. You have to stay in the house. And for that, it is a toll-free hotline, but it has a whole ecosystem. We took advantage of our providers across the country, and the hotline was centrally managed in Nairobi. But if you called in as a pregnant woman, you will definitely speak to a counselor. We will provide a prescription. We would allow you to even visit the nearby laboratory for the tests, share the results with us, and refer you. In case there are complications, then we would refer you to a nearby healthcare provider. If you needed medication, then we would also do a prescription through our counselors and our healthcare providers, and you would go to a closer by pharmacy to pick the pills. What did this do? This, of course, improved access to care. It gave women the bodily autonomy. It allowed them to be confident and be able to manage their even pregnancies, in an incident where they never thought it would happen. They got power over their body, and and they knew that when they got a complication, they would reach out to the hotline, they would speak to a trained healthcare provider, they would get reassured. But we also, because the ministry in the RMNH policy, they had one of the bullets that said that pregnant women needed to limit visits to the healthcare facilities. So this meant that if you could quickly access your midwife, your gynecologist, your doctor via phone, then that meant that you as a woman, you are also reducing the chances of being exposed to COVID. So those are some of the, I think I would say, innovations. And even as we think through and struggle with COVID-19, I know we are at a heightened level where we want to even support the ministry to put in place a self-care policy, because it is important that women appreciate that I do not have to physically go to a trained healthcare provider for me to get services. We want you to take charge of your health as a woman. We want you to be able to speak to a healthcare provider at the comfort of your home, be able to do a pregnancy test. I mean, we've done it before, be able to have a HIV test, of course, with a counselor on board, counseling you and taking you through. And we also want you, after safely delivering, you should be able to even self-inject yourself. We have contraceptives that allow you to comfortably inject yourself at the comfort of your home, but with support of a healthcare provider on phone. I think I'll stop at that.
Yes,
Thank you
I
so
would actually
much.
love for you to stop at that because your content is so heavy. I'm also internalizing. I'm like, all these things are happening. Where is the information? Who knows about it? Maybe that should be a challenge to the Unmothering the Woman team to also put this out there for people to be able to know, you know, because if you have services like telemedicine, Jesus, yes. Then this is something that a lot of people would benefit from, and we need to be able to put that out there.
Exactly.
Maggie, I'm still reeling from your conversation and your story and your experience, and my mind is telling me, no, that should not be the thing that is happening to women. And I'm very tempted to, I'm skipping you, Grace, to jump to Farida and understand, because Maggie says she wasn't working at that particular point. But I'm asking myself, there are women who are going through this working, and we know that we had some employers who are not very open to working from home. And we also have some jobs that you cannot work from home, you know. As a HR official, what is your thought about the conversations? Because we've had appeals from women way before the pandemic about flexi time, proper lactation rooms, and functional lactation rooms, you know, and unrestricted or undistracted maternity and paternity leave. You know, when you go for maternity leave and people are still calling you to send emails. So what would you say is the status at the moment, and what is it that you think needs to be adopted in the workplace that would make the situation better?
Okay, thanks for that, Carol. And Maggie, thank you so much for sharing your story, because even as you were saying it, I was reflecting on some of the women in the workplace who have been going through those situations, and what have I done as an HR practitioner, and what have my colleagues as HR practitioners done about it. So I think first and foremost, what I would like to say is that in terms of our policies and legislation and all of that, it's very basic. It's very lacking. We have our maternity policy of 3 months. We have sick leave policies. For example, you were on bed rest for 4 months. And I look at it, bed rest for 4 months. What happens to you if you're in the workplace? The truth is, depending on the organization that you work in, legislation is simply 14 days full pay, 7 days half pay. So what happens after that? And organizations that adopt superior legislation actually go to 30 days with full pay, 15 with half. So what happens after that? Okay, so there's a bit of an economic crisis that comes in. Now, this is something that has not necessarily made it to the forefront, and now it's a conversation that is happening. How do we support our mothers in corporate environments? So previously, it doesn't matter, you're male, you're female, this is what legislation says, but now we are having more conversations around that. We are, despite the fact that pre-COVID, working flexibly was unheard of. A lot of organizations, in fact, when COVID was announced, was it on 13th of March? Immediately, and I was sharing this with one of our panelists, we started working from home shortly thereafter. They also started working from home shortly thereafter. Most of Kenya moved to working from home, all right? But shortly thereafter, I mean, you have essential services, you have people in the medical sector, people in the banking sector who still had to go to the office. And you know what happened is that even as HR practitioners, we were fumbling. We've never seen anything like this. Who knows what to do in a pandemic? You're all just sort of creating forums and trying to figure out, okay, so first of all, when somebody has COVID, is it sick leave? Is it annual leave? What do we do? How do we support this person? So you have pregnant women who are vulnerable. What do we do? You're working in a banking hall. Does this lady have to come to the office? So if they don't come to the office, can they work from home? Are you going to tell her from the house? You can't. Yeah. So how do we support them? So these are the conversations that are ongoing. So what I can say is that in terms of policies, pretty rudimentary, but we are getting there. We are creating a lot of support systems. What organizations are doing now, they do have special policies to support the mother. I like some of those things that we are seeing. I like the fact that a lady can actually stay from home, be given alternative work, not necessarily lose her job because she is pregnant. So that much I like. I like that we are now getting medical insurance covers that cover COVID. That was a really, really, really big deal, by the way. So that is something that I really like. I like that we have in place employee assistance programs. I like that, we're having conversations around proactive therapy. I listened to Maggie's story, and Maggie went into therapy. Was it 7 months? 7 months after? When the baby was 7 months. So you can only imagine the sort of trauma that she's gone through from the time that she was pregnant, the time she gave birth, and all that time. I mean, I'm sure that there has been a lot of healing that had to happen. But now, as HR practitioners, we are saying, you know what? We need to recognize this. So we're in that recognition space. So we are recognizing this. This is a problem. This is something that needs to be addressed. You can't look at an expectant mother in this COVID era like any other woman, like any other employee. It's not that this person is sick, but this person has a condition where they need a little bit of special attention, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that's where we are at in terms of our headspace. There is a lot of awareness creation that has to happen, and that is happening, because even in our workplace, let me tell you, your managers have no clue. They're also fumbling. They're also learning. So we have to create awareness. We have to sensitize them as to the sort of journey that an expectant woman goes through. Now, I know I'm saying this and I'm not mentioning any specific policies. I mean, they're very, it depends on your organization, basically. And it's just a progressive discussion that is happening. So I'm going to put legislation aside because that's not really helping us much right now. And then creating support systems. So I keep saying that, you need to create an environment of psychological safety. How do you create an environment of psychological safety? It just depends on some of those policies and some of those initiatives that you put in place, because an expectant mother going through everything that they're going through needs to feel that this is a safe space where I can come in and I can talk about what it is that I'm going through. I will not be judged. I will not be seen as weaker than. I'll not be seen as incompetent. And I will be supported by the organization. So I would just like to say that those are the kind of conversations that are going on. Employee listening is very, very important, especially for ladies who would be going through that experience. Okay. So I hope I've shed a little bit of light on that.
Yeah, I'm here getting pins and deals because I'm like, my employer should be here. My employer should hear this conversation. Where are these things? But that's a conversation for another story. Thank you so much for your contribution. Now, I mean, we've all spotlighted how this is a problem, and I love the way you're saying that, yes, the legislation is not sufficient and we need to be able to adopt a lot more progressive and responsive guidelines, policies, and legislation that speak to the context and situation of women. And I'm also thinking, I mean, jump into legislation. That's why I'm coming back to you, Grace. Jump into this legislation. Where are we as a country? What are some of the laws? What are some of the legislations? What are some of the conversations that have been had by legislators or duty bearers that look like they could address the problem and the challenge that is care work for women?
Right. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And it's good that we had my colleague from Reproductive Health Network Kenya going before me, because she's mentioned quite a number of the policies that you already have in place in response to the pandemic that you're currently in. Let me say, in terms of a country, we also borrow very heavily from the global level. And just to mention a few, we have quite a number of global players that came in pretty fast when the pandemic hit the globe, and put together guidelines and policies just to make sure that we are able to respond. As much as we were fumbling, also the guidelines were really helpful. So if you'll allow me, perhaps I can start off with the global level before now I come down to the national level and perhaps just add on to what my colleague has just mentioned. So at the policy level, at the global level, we had most of them first were done between the months of May and April 2020. So that was like a month after the pandemic was announced. Yeah. And one of them is the UNFPA technical brief for maternity services, which was released on 10th April. You'll allow me to mention there are quite a number. I don't know, is it my mic that is not so good? Then we also had CDC, COVID-19 infection and pregnancy, which was released on 10th April 2020. We also had Safe Motherhood and COVID-19 released on 10th April. And we had CDC COVID-19 in pregnancy and breastfeeding also released on 10th April 2020. We had UNFPA protecting midwives to keep women and babies safe amidst COVID-19 pandemic, released on 20th April 2020. We had COVID-19 contraception and family planning, which was released on 20th April 2019. We also had COVID-19 pregnancy and breastfeeding. This basically was key messages to patients. who have COVID-19 or who want to prevent themselves from COVID-19. Then from UN Women, we had a study released on the impact of COVID-19 on women. Then from WHO, we had COVID-19 resources for pregnancy, childbirth, and postnatal care. This was released on 25th April 2020. Then also from UNICEF, we had Navigating Pregnancy During COVID-19 Pandemic, also released on 25th April 2020. And then there's one that my colleague had mentioned, the practical guidelines for continuity of reproductive, maternal, newborn, and family planning services provision during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's basically at the global level. But now coming back to Kenya as a country, because I believe we also borrowed heavily from the global policies that were put in, the guidelines that were put in place. We had one that was released on 20th May, which was the Kenya Guidance on Provision of Essential Health Services during COVID-19. And this basically looked also at maternal health and reproductive health in general, in terms of guidelines on the provision of these services. The other one that was also released during this time, this was in April. This is the COVID-19 quarantine protocols, and basically looked at all the people, including the pregnant women and also the breastfeeding or the lactating women. We also had minimum standards on COVID-19 community health response, which were released on 10th April 2020. As well as the pediatric COVID-19 guidelines, because you see, when you look at the vulnerable populations, then we are looking at the expectant mothers, we're also looking at the lactating women, but we're also looking at the neonates and also the children as very vulnerable. So we cannot talk about the mother without bringing the child into this particular equation. So this was particularly very relevant. Then again, we also had nutrition messages in COVID-19 prevention. There was so much that was going around. At some point, personally, I wasn't really sure what to do in the case of COVID-19, and these nutrition messages then came in handy. People were told to take dawa, take kitungu saumu, and many, many other things. So these came in very handy. And also, we had the COVID-19 reproductive, maternal, and newborn health national guidelines for Kenya. I think my colleague had already mentioned. And just to mention this, there was also a study that was done in May 2020 that was actually showing that pregnant women in rural Kenya were really struggling to access healthcare during the COVID-19 pandemic. And my colleague has already outlined a number of the challenges that they went through. And having said that, then I think I can go into the innovations that we as AMREF Health Africa came up with in terms of ensuring that we are increasing demand creation and also utilization and access of reproductive health services or maternal health services.
I'll just let you pause on that, because my next question is going to be on advocacy and how this has been sensitized.
Okay.
And then I'll circle back to you.
All right, thanks.
Now that I really, really, really hate saying this, but we have honestly run out of time, but as much as I hate that statement. So I didn't want to disrupt your maiden conversations, but now we can try and compress it a little bit. The second question will really just be on advocacy and mental health. I would love for you to be able to speak about any specific interventions that you've had on mental health, and also on advocacy. We've mentioned a lot of policies, a lot of things that are happening, but I speak for a lot of people when I say that we are unaware. We do not know them. We don't know how to access them. We don't even know how to understand whatever has been provided in these guidelines, policies that you are actually talking about. So what are the advocacy measures that you have done, you or your organization, and the space that you're in have taken to be able to get people to know what these are, and particularly women and girls, and how to interact with them? So I'll start from Maggie. Your question will really just be speaking about the mental health and how you think whatever the conversation has been in the first round speaks or touches on the responses to mental health.
I think I think I've been in the advocacy space like off a little bit. So I'm actually learning that all these policies are in place. It's making me feel nice for the women right now because they can access them. But when I was pregnant, I knew nothing that I could call someone and just talk to them. I didn't know that existed. And maybe I could just share my mental health now in terms of, and then they can respond to what is there maybe for someone going through the same. For me, I as I mentioned, I went through all these things in autopilot. It's just at hindsight, at therapies, when I realized, hey, I've been through shit. So I discovered there's something called postpartum blues. I didn't know about that. So I was in hospital crying. Why did I have a C-section? Yani, I couldn't push, just pushing. Yani, I was crying. And my friend Kambua was able to talk to me. Funny thing, she was the one online. She was like my therapist that day, telling me it's okay and everything. But postpartum blues died down at 2 weeks. I also had my big sister who was she was aware it happens. I didn't know. Then later on is now 7 months. My child is 7 months. I am an angry person. You wake me up, I'm angry. I am an anxious person. I was not okay, and when one day I had like a mental breakdown when I had a very good nanny. She told me she's leaving, and I after she left I cried because I was like, now who will help me? Who will help me? That's when my husband was like, okay, let's write down what's wrong with you. What are you feeling? So when I write those things, I'm not sleeping. I'm scared to sleep. I'm even scared to sleep. But I could watch the sun come out and just looking. We need to start the day. Chap, chap, the sun. So I wrote all those things and he was like, you're not okay. You're not okay. So you need to go for therapy. So I remember calling the therapist, and what put me off was the therapy was online. And because how am I going to carry an online session with no nanny and a baby? How? That environment was intoxicating me. I needed a new space. So I begged her. I told her, by the way, I have never called a therapy. I have never experienced, you don't want to say you have depression. I did so many online questionnaires. How to know you have postpartum? Tick, tick, tick. I have. Okay, another site. Like that. That's how I knew I have a problem. So when I begged her, and she said, I don't see people, but she was in Kahawa. I drove like over 40 kilometers to go see her. And that's when I began to process. By the way, all these things have happened. She was like, I'm really sorry you've gone through all this. And I need you to accept that it's okay. You've gone through. I had not accepted. I was just like, why me? So she was really empathetic. And that's the first time I had someone acknowledge that I have been through a lot, because I just thought motherhood is supposed to kuwa strong, go to work, yani I'm supposed to do this thing and do it well. But I felt seen. I felt like someone has seen that I have gone through surgeries after surgeries and had a baby. I didn't even mention that I lived with my in-laws for like a month when my baby was born, because their grandma was sick. You don't know what it is to live with 7 Kisii women, no hate, in one house with a newborn. You do not know what Yani, I don't know even me, how did I? You don't know what that. Hey, I'm married there. They are amazing people. But do I want to host them for 3 weeks, for a month? I hope my mom-in-law is not watching. No, you do not want to live with people who do not whisper, because I need my baby to sleep and I'll just no, you do not want to people who do not believe in eating meat. So we will eat mboga, we will eat uji. I don't like uji. We will eat everything this. You've given birth. They are helping me, but they are messing my health. I had to tell my husband, you need to get them out or I go. And he got them out, thankfully, lovingly. Yeah, so all those things boiling down to the 7 months. When I went to therapy, I took active steps. To date, I take active steps. When I need to go away, as a mom, I will go away. If I need to go for a holiday, I will go. If I need, I'm very intentional, and that's what I talk about in my space. I say it is okay to take a trip after therapy. The next day, I went for a trip for 1 week. I had never left my child. For 1 whole week, I was out. And people in my DM were like, you can do that. And they did. So in terms of mental health, I can say I took charge. I had the financial capacity to pay for myself that facility. I'm just glad that there are measures to help women, even if it's on the phone. But the impact of COVID for me is I did not like the thing for online. It just didn't work out for a new mom per se. I know they're helping, but it's not helping as much in that moment. That's my mental health journey. I don't want even to go into the fact that I discovered men have postpartum now later. My husband has been my support system, and then he started now crumbling in his mental health. A mothering woman, so a mothering event. So that's a whole topic altogether. But I take mental health very seriously. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Nelly,
And when she's speaking, she's just basically talking about self-care.
yeah.
And this is conversations that we've been having since we realized there was no shortcut about COVID. And we have advanced self-care, self-care, self-care. And working again with a civil society organization, and also appreciating that a lot of these mental cases, they end up at our facilities. Then the hotline came in handy because, like she's just said it, the many cases from reports that we get at the organizational level is the many people that call in, they don't even realize they have a mental issue. They are giving you a story, until the counselor now decides to have several counseling sessions with them. And then that's when they appreciate that they have been having a mental issue. So beyond the hotline that then provides a safe space because they're able to open up and share a lot of issues that have been going on, especially during COVID, we've been having conversations both online and offline where we provide a lot of information on self-care, what they need to do, with whom, and at what time. So when you check out on our social media platform, we've really been actively engaging and having cross-generational speakers because issues to do with mental care, mental health are not only limited to adolescents or youth, even women in marriage, or women that are just taking care of the children. A lot of them lost a source of income. Some of them were single and they didn't have anyone to support them. So we try to have conversations and bring in all speakers just to make sure that we are supporting a lot of people as much as possible. Then we also take the conversation to the community because, again, like I said, at times we tend to speak to ourselves. Our reach is for the people who can access a smartphone, but we have people that have issues in the communities and they need these conversations right in the communities. So we have been engaging a lot in the community dialogues, and we've been intentional in terms of bringing in the religious leaders because we know the role they play, and then the opinion leaders in the community, just making sure that, again, at that level, we have an ecosystem that supports people that are having mental issues. Then working very closely with the county government because we realize that a lot of very beautiful policies that we have, implementation is almost 0 or 20 or 10%. I mean, Kenya is very good in putting documents together, but when it comes to implementation, it needs people making noise on the streets before, they're like, iko, and then it becomes a controversial issue. So what we have done, and it's working, is taking those beautiful policies from the national level and going to work directly with the county government. The county government are very accommodative, very supportive, and they're trying to find a way to domesticate some of these policies. And that's why we are seeing a lot of progress at the counties as we continue to struggle with the national government. Also, just being intentional again, engaging with the young people. And when you want to reach out to the young people, you need their fellow young people to be talking to them. So writing articles on print media, engaging in TV interviews so that they are able to share the experiences, just as Maggie is doing, because a lot of people can relate that, hata mimi, this is what I went through. If she made it, she probably afforded, she was able to afford a holiday. I might not afford a holiday, but I would find something else to do so that I get out of this status. So those are some of the advocacy. I know I'm seeing the watch. Yeah, those are some of the advocacy interventions that we've been able to do as an organization.
Okay. Thank you so much, Grace.
Thank you very much.
I think the microphones don't like you.
Hello. Finally. I had switched off because I didn't want the echo. So, as you'll all agree with me, COVID-19 was declared a public health emergency of international concern in the year 2020. And as we all also know, no one in the world was prepared for the public health emergency. So what we did as an organization, that is AMREF Health Africa, when COVID was declared with us and we had to act pretty fast, we had to start from the top. And that was equipping the frontline workers with the requisite information and skills so that they are able to be responsive and be first line responders at the community level where the virus was wreaking havoc. So what we did using our already existing innovations, that is MJALI and LEAP, which are digital platforms that we use to do capacity building for health workers. We brought on board many of the frontline workers to be able to access as much, but now that started with content creation on COVID-19. So we were able to put together 4 modules on COVID-19 and also get to onboard as many frontline workers, starting from the top right up to the community health strategy level, where we have the community health volunteers and the child protection volunteers who act at the household level. Yeah. And in Nairobi only, we actually had 5,100 community health volunteers who completed the COVID-19 modules successfully, not mentioning the whole country. So that was the very first thing, because we wanted them to be as responsive and as well equipped as they respond. Then also working very closely with the Ministry of Health, the Department of Community Health Services, we were able to join different task forces that were put together. And this was particularly to make sure that the community sensitization is very effective. So we were able to jump in. We were using actually WhatsApp because that was the easiest platform to use, and be able also to share the messages that were being developed, the strategic behavior change communication messages that were being developed at the national level, right down to our community champions. So our community champions range from community health volunteers, clan elders, talk of morans, talk of adolescent mothers. So all these were able to get the information through different platforms, and also, channel these messages to their fellow, if it's the morans, to their fellow morans in the fora as they take care of the cattle and other livestock. Then the other thing that we did was to work very closely with the tech survey young people and put together or revamp the digital platforms that we have. We have one called Africa, which is a very effective platform that works with adolescents and young people or the youth in terms of getting them the requisite information on sexual reproductive health, but also linking them to reproductive health products. Okay. So working very closely with Kasha Kenya, where during the COVID period, they are able to get their supplies for, let's say, menstrual absorbents and other reproductive health products, and also get expert-approved information, not just Googling in the internet and just getting perhaps misleading information. We also have Ask Doki, which is also a digital platform. This is WhatsApp-enabled, and it's a bot that has expert-approved information, and the adolescents and the youth are able to engage with the bot and get the right information. Over and above that, we also used or utilized other strategic behavior change communication strategies. And one of them was using community radio. Because during that time, and especially for the marginalized, they were perhaps not able to even look at the television, but through the community radio, especially for those living in the informal settlements and those living in the very rural, like the Manyatas, they were able to listen in. So we had content and subject matter experts, supported by the organization, to share the relevant information and also engage them in short messages and also call-ins so that they're able to get the right information. I think one of our most exciting innovation was the village runs, where we engaged the frontline workers in the interior to move from one Manyata to the other as they pass the information, and also ensure that the Manyata residents are getting the services, the health services, reproductive health services that they do require. Not so sure if I've left out any, but in case I have, perhaps I can come in later. Thank you.
Great. So I'll make mine short, so I'll say that in typical Kenyan fashion. But I think that with regards to mental wellness, some of the institutional policies that we need to have in place are family-friendly policies and wellness policies. I am very fortunate to work in an organization where that is very core to us. We focus a lot on, by the way, we focus a lot on the female. So we focus a lot on young girls, adolescent girls. We focus a lot on, we are an organization that is actually predominantly female. And one thing that we do in our organization is wellness is very central. So we focus very strongly on wellness. We have institutionalized it. We have put it in, it's there in our day-to-day, in our meetings, in our activities, in everything. I work in an organization where it's okay as part of policy to say that you're not okay and support is going to be provided to you. I think that is very unique and we are leading when it comes to this, and that's what organizations need to do. So we really need to have this. We need to have a lot of family-friendly policies. Some of our family-friendly policies include when you come back from maternity, how do you come back from your maternity leave? Do you just come back in and boom, you have all your targets, all your objectives, everything is needed, immediately? No, you have to recognize that the woman who comes back from maternity needs to slowly ease back into work for 3 months or 6 months, depending on your policy. This lady has not been thinking of work. This lady has been thinking of my baby. I am my baby's primary caregiver and all of this. So we need to recognize that and have some sort of return to work coaching policies in place. We need to have what we call post-maternity policies that are in place. Do you expect somebody to come back to work and immediately put in an 8 or 9 hour day? I think that is unrealistic. We need to start recognizing that, and we need to start having policies that actually look into that. And I think that's really going to play into the mental well-being of our female employees who have just come back from maternity. Yeah. So I said I'll keep it short, and I have kept it short.
Thank you so much, Farida. I really need to wind this up before Wambui comes to pluck us out. So I will ask that in one word, literally one word, give one word that explains the situation as is when it comes to care work and mothering. I will start actually. Mine is promising. Yes, Farida. This is the part for the exam, eh?
Evolving.
Evolving. Grace. Okay. Nelly. Promising. Maggie.
Developing.
Developing. Thank you. Responsive. Thank you so much, women. Thank you for your phenomenal conversations, and thank you for engaging us and telling us things that we really are unaware of and challenging me and the UnMothering the Woman team. Round of applause for them as we walk out, and walk out in style.